In the dim glow of a makeshift hangar on a fog-shrouded airfield in England, 1943, Wing Commander Elias Thorne hunched over the sleek fuselage of the experimental fighter, his gloved hands tracing the rivets that promised speed beyond imagination. The air hummed with the distant roar of Merlin engines warming up for dawn patrols, but Thorne's focus was singular. The P-51 Mustang, a beast engineered by North American Aviation, whispered secrets of velocity that could shatter the sound barrier's edge. He was a Canadian pilot, seconded from the Royal Canadian Air Force to the RAF's elite testing squadron, his breath fogging the cold metal as he imagined pushing her to 500 miles per hour. The war demanded supremacy in the skies, and whispers from intelligence reports suggested the Germans were closing in with their own wonders. The Me-262 jet, perhaps, or the Ta-152 interceptor. Thorne's heart pounded with a mix of dread and exhilaration. Failure here meant Allied bombers would fall like autumn leaves over the Reich. As mechanics swarmed like shadows, tightening bolts and fueling the beast with high-octane avgas, Thorne climbed into the cockpit, the leather seat creaking under his frame. Instruments blinked to life, altimeters spinning, and he gripped the stick, feeling the pulse of impending flight. Outside, the wind howled across the runway, carrying the acrid scent of oil and cordite from last night's raid. This wasn't just a test, it was a gamble against physics and the enemy, where one burst of throttle could etch his name in history or scatter his remains across the channel. Thorne taxied out, the propellers slicing the mist, his mind racing faster than the plane ever could. 500 MPH, the holy grail, the edge that would turn the tide. Thorne's journey to this moment traced back to the frozen tundras of Saskatchewan, where he'd first tasted the sky in a battered Tiger Moth trainer, enlisting in 1940 as the world teetered on Hitler's conquests. Canada, thrust into the fray by imperial ties and a fierce sense of justice, had poured its youth into the Commonwealth Air Training Plan, churning out pilots like Thorne, who now flew for survival. Assigned to No. 411 Squadron, the City of Toronto Fighters, he'd racked up kills over Dieppe, his Spitfire dancing through flak that claimed lesser men. But speed had become the obsession after a brutal debrief. Luftwaffe aces in FW-190s outpacing RAF pursuits, turning dogfights into chases. Enter the Mustang, shipped across the Atlantic in crates, its laminar flow wings a radical design borrowed from American ingenuity but honed by British demands. Thorne's squadron mates, burly Sergeant Liam Hargrove from Halifax, with his quick laugh masking survivor's guilt, and the stoic Flight Lieutenant Noah Riley, a Quebecois sharpshooter whose rosary beads dangled from the mirror, shared his fervor. They'd bonded over rationed scotch in Nissen huts, trading tales of lost wings and the girls waiting back home. Yet tension simmered. Rumors swirled of a rival Canadian test pilot, Captain Oliver Grant from Vancouver, working on a modified Hawker Tempest at a secret base in Scotland, pushing boundaries the brass deemed reckless. As Thorne strapped in for his first high-altitude run, Hargrove clapped his shoulder, eyes shadowed by fatigue. "Push her, Elias, for the lads we couldn't save." The engine snarled to life, prop wash bending the grass, and Thorne felt the weight of empire on his shoulders. Canada's contribution no longer just manpower, but innovation racing against the clock. As the Mustang clawed into the overcast sky, climbing to 25, the USU feet where the air thinned to a razor edge, Thorne sensed the machine's hunger mirroring his own. Below, the English countryside blurred into patchwork fields scarred by bomb craters, a reminder of the Blitz's lingering scars. He'd been briefed meticulously. Throttle to the stops at optimal altitude, dive to build velocity, monitor the airspeed indicator like a hawk. But the rising tension gnawed at him. Engine superchargers whining unnaturally, a faint vibration suggesting instability. Hargrove's voice crackled over the radio from the control tower. "Steady on, Elias. Winds are shifting. Keep her trimmed." Thorne acknowledged with a click, his mind flashing to Riley, who was grounded with a sprained ankle from a rough landing, cursing in French as he watched from the ops room. The squadron's emotional core pulsed through these flights. They'd lost young Jack Sutherland just weeks prior, his plane disintegrating mid-dogfight, leaving a void filled with grim determination. Now, as Thorne leveled off, the altimeter steady, he eased the throttle forward. The Merlin Vi-12 bellowed, torque twisting the airframe, and speed crept up, 300, 350, 400 mph in level flight. Exhilaration surged, but so did fear. At these velocities, a flutter in the wings could spell flutter-induced breakup. Intelligence chatter hinted the Germans' Heinkel He 162. Volksjäger, a plywood jet, might already flirt with 500. Its simplicity a wartime miracle. Thorne's pulse raced. Was the Mustang truly first, or was Grant's Tempest stealing the thunder up north? A sudden gust buffeted the plane, instruments flickering, and he fought the stick, sweat beading under his oxygen mask. The feeling of something terrible loomed, not just mechanical failure, but the revelation that Speed's crown might belong to the enemy, or worse, a forgotten Allied prototype buried in classified files. The major problem erupted without mercy as Thorne committed to the dive, the Mustang's nose dropping earthward like a falcon in stoop. Airspeed surged past 450 MPH, the cockpit vibrating violently, controls buffeting in his grip as if the plane rebelled against its own limits. Alarms wailed, compressor stall imminent, and Thorne's world narrowed to the screaming wind and the acrid tang of overheating oil seeping through vents. Below, the channel glittered mockingly, a graveyard for bolder souls. He'd pushed too hard. The experimental drop tanks, meant to extend range, now acted as drag parasites, unjettisoning properly in the chaos. Radio silence from the tower amplified his isolation. Was the link severed by interference, or had disaster struck the field? Memories assaulted him. Hargrove's tales of his fisherman's father, lost at sea, mirroring this uncontrollable plunge. Riley's quiet vows to return to Montreal's streets, unscathed. The hard decision crystallized. Pull out now and risk stalling at speed, or nurse her through to 500, sacrificing perhaps the airframe, maybe his life. Fear clawed raw, death's shadow in every shuddering frame, the G-forces pinning him as if gravity conspired with the Reich. Confusion reigned. Was this the breakthrough or breakdown? Thorne yanked the stick, fighting aileron reversal, the plane groaning in protest. At 490 mph, the indicator quivered, teasing the threshold, but a wingtip stall loomed, promising a spin into oblivion. Suspense peaked, his breath ragged, every fiber screaming retreat, yet glory, for Canada, for the Allies, demanded the plunge. In that suspended agony, a spark of hope flickered. If he survived, the data would arm the squadrons, turning pursuits into predators. But the suffering etched deep, a foretaste of war's unyielding toll. The climax shattered the tension in a blaze of mechanical fury as Thorne crested 500 mph, the Mustang howling like a banshee unchained, only for the explosive twist to unfold. A cascade of rivets popping along the fuselage, the plane bucking wildly as structural integrity frayed. Chaos enveloped him, canopy frosting from extreme pressures, altimeter spinning backward in the dive's frenzy, and the radio bursting alive with Hargrove's frantic yells. "Elias! Bail out! She's coming apart!" But Thorne held, last chance seized in a desperate half-roll, leveling at 480 before the wings held firm. The Speed King's crown tentatively his. If you're still here with him in this moment, subscribe, so their courage lives on. The unexpected turn revealed itself not in destruction, but in a glint on the horizon. An unidentified aircraft, sleek and jet black, streaking parallel at matching velocity. Its silhouette neither Allied nor Axis, a ghost from the shadows of experimental programs, hinting the shocking truth was yet untold. In the Resolution's somber hush, Thorne nursed the limping Mustang back to base, touching down amid cheers and the acrid smoke of burst tires, the airframe scarred but intact. Hargrove and Riley rushed forward, pulling him from the cockpit, their embraces rough with relief, masking the losses etched in every pilot's eyes. Sutherland gone. Others maimed in mind, if not body. The data logs confirmed it. The P-51 had pierced 500 mph first in operational trim, a Canadian hand on the tiller tipping the scales. Yet victory soured with realism. The war's grind continued, speed a fleeting edge against endless skies of foes. Thorne slumped in debrief, the emotional wreckage surfacing, haunted by the dive's abyss. Questioning if the cost justified the crown. Comrades shared quiet nods, bonds forged in fire, but the bitter reflection lingered. Innovation born of desperation, survival a lottery. As night fell, the hangar lights flickered on the patched fighter, a symbol of resilience amid ruin. Thorne stared at the flickering hangar lights long after the debrief had ended, the weight of the day's triumph pressing against his chest like an unyielding flak vest. The Mustang sat propped on blocks, its skin a patchwork of hasty welds where the rivets had given way, a testament to the edge they'd danced upon. Hargrove lingered nearby, nursing a cigarette in the chill night air, his broad shoulders slumped under the burden of unspoken fears. "That shadow you saw, Elias, could be one of ours gone rogue, or worse," he muttered, exhaling smoke that curled like the contrails of ghosts. Riley, his ankle wrapped but spirit unbroken, joined them with a thermos of lukewarm tea, his Quebecois accent thick with fatigue. "Mon ami, the brass will want answers. That jet-black silhouette? Not Luftwaffe, not Spitfire. Smells like secrets buried deeper than Dieppe." The airfield, tucked into the rolling hills of Kent, hummed with subdued activity. Ground crews patching wounds on other birds, the distant thrum of generators a lullaby for the weary. Thorne nodded, his mind replaying the glint on the horizon, a sleek form that mocked the Mustang's piston-driven roar with silent menace. Canada's role in this aerial arms race had evolved from raw manpower to cutting-edge gambles, pilots like him bridging the Atlantic with blueprints and bravery. But the shocking truth about 500 MPH lingered unsolved. Intelligence briefs hinted at prototypes scattered across Allied labs, from American skunkworks to British wind tunnels, each vying to claim the speed crown first. As the trio huddled against the wind, a dispatch rider skidded up on a motorcycle, mud-splattered envelope in hand. "Orders from High Command. Report to a classified briefing at RAF Duxford at dawn, where rival programs converged." Thorne felt the rising tension coil anew. Hargrove's easy grin faded. Riley crossed himself subtly. The war's skies were no longer just battlegrounds. They were arenas of innovation, where one overlooked design could rewrite history. Sleep evaded them that night, the hangar's shadows whispering of pursuits yet to come, comrades' bonds tightening against the unknown. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving over Duxford, the sprawling base a hive of activity where experimental aircraft gleamed under camouflage netting like predators in wait. Thorne, Hargrove, and Riley arrived in a battered staff car, the engine coughing through the mist as they passed rows of Mustangs, Tempests, and the odd captured Focke-Wulf, its swastika painted over in hasty whitewash. The briefing room, a Quonset hut buried under sandbags, buzzed with brass and boffins, scientists in tweed with slide rules at the ready, alongside pilots from across the Commonwealth. At the head stood Group Captain Archibald Sinclair, his mustache twitching as he unrolled charts marked with velocity curves and altitude profiles. "Gentlemen, Thorne's dive yesterday cracked the barrier, but it's not the full picture," he barked, his Scottish brogue cutting the tension. Maps pinpointed sightings, Thorne's ghost plane, erratic radio bursts from Scotland, and whispers of a Canadian-led project in the Shetlands, pushing a de Havilland Mosquito variant to absurd speeds. Enter Captain Oliver Grant, the rival Thorne had heard of in hushed tones. Tall, sharp-featured from Vancouver's rain-slicked docks, his RCAF uniform crisp despite the mud on his boots. Grant's eyes met Thorne's across the room, a flicker of competitive fire amid the nods of respect. "Elias, your Mustang's a marvel, but we've got something leaner up north," Grant said later, over lukewarm coffee in the mess, his voice laced with that West Coast drawl. Hargrove chuckled uneasily, sensing the undercurrent. Riley, ever the skeptic, probed with questions about Grant's Tempest modifications, supercharged Sabre engines, clipped wings for drag reduction. Emotional ties wove through the rivalry. Grant spoke of his brother lost in the Battle of Britain, fueling his drive, much like Thorne's own losses over the Channel. Yet the air thickened with foreboding. Sinclair revealed intercepted Luftwaffe signals boasting of the Me-163 Comet rocket plane, a vertical terror rumored to touch 700 MPH in glides, though its fuel lasted mere minutes. As the group pored over blueprints, Thorne traced the lines of Grant's design, admiration warring with doubt. The feeling that something terrible brewed intensified. Betrayal in the ranks? Sabotage from Axis spies? Outside, a test flight roared overhead, a tempest slicing the clouds, its pilot anonymous but pushing limits that echoed Thorne's own gamble. Comrades exchanged glances, the weight of Empire's expectations pressing down, Canada's sons at the forefront of a race where hesitation meant obsolescence. The major problem descended like a storm front as Thorne and Grant were paired for a joint evaluation flight, their aircraft taxiing side by side on Duxford's rain-slicked runway, engines harmonizing in a symphony of raw power. The mission: a tandem high-speed run over the North Sea, comparing the Mustang's long-range prowess against the Tempest's brutal acceleration, with boffins monitoring from a circling Mosquito. Thorne's heart hammered as he ran through checklists, the cockpit familiar yet alien under scrutiny. Hargrove's voice on the intercom steadying him. "Eyes sharp, lad. Grant's no slouch." But as they lifted off, climbing through scattered cumulus, confusion erupted. Grant's Tempest veered erratically, radio crackling with static-laced warnings of instrument failure. "Thorn, something's off! Compass spinning wild!" Grant's call came urgent, his plane banking sharply to avoid a mid-air shear. Below, the sea churned gray, dotted with convoy specks vulnerable to U-boat shadows. A stark reminder of why speed mattered. Thorn's Mustang responded fluidly, but the ambush hit when flak bursts, impossibly accurate, erupted from an unseen source, tracer rounds stitching the sky like fiery lace. Not German guns, this was friendly fire, or a trap sprung by infiltrators. The hard decision loomed: break formation to evade, abandoning the test, or press on, risking Grant's life for data supremacy. Fear gripped Thorn raw, death's proximity in every evasive twist, the G-forces blurring his vision as he jinked left, a shell fragment pinging off his canopy. Hargrove's shouts from base amplified the chaos. "Bogies inbound, 2 o'clock low." But radar showed nothing. Was it electronic warfare, a new Nazi trick? Grant's Tempest shuddered. Smoke trailing from an engine cowling, yet he held formation, his voice defiant. "Not pulling out, Elias, for the boys in the bombers." Suffering etched their resolve. Thorn recalled Sutherland's final transmission, a plea cut short, mirroring this peril. Suspense clawed to its zenith as they dove for speed, airspeed needles climbing, 460, 470, the sea rushing up like a void. A wingman, young Sergeant Ethan Caldwell from Ottawa, peeled off to cover, his Spitfire a fleeting guardian before a burst claimed him, debris spiraling into the waves. Thorn's world tunneled to survival, every control input a prayer, the shocking truth about 500 MPH now tangled in betrayal's web. Riley, monitoring from the ground, pounded the radio console, his rosary forgotten in helpless rage. The plunge demanded sacrifice. Thorn jettisoned tanks, gaining precious knots, but Grant's plane faltered, altitude bleeding away. Real fear of death permeated the cockpit, sweat stinging eyes, the war's grind stripping illusions of heroism to brutal calculus. Climax exploded in the heart of the North Sea maelstrom, the two fighters hurtling toward 500 MPH in tandem desperation. The Tempest's nose inching ahead as Grant's modifications paid dividends, only for the heavy threat to manifest. A squadron of shadowy FW-190s materializing from low cloud, their radial engines snarling defiance. Chaos reigned. Cannons chattered, Thorn's Mustang twisting in a desperate barrel roll, bullets raking the fuselage in fiery lines. Last chance flickered as Grant broke right, drawing fire to shield Thorn's dive, his voice a ragged bark over the radio. "Finish it, Canadian. Claim the speed for us all." If you're still here with him in this moment, subscribe, so their courage lives on. The explosive twist unfurled not in defeat, but revelation. One FW-190 peeled away, its pilot bailing out to reveal Allied markings beneath the camouflage paint, a rogue element. Perhaps a defector's ploy or internal sabotage to discredit the programs. Thorn crested 505 MPH in the chaos, the indicator maxing out before he pulled up, wings straining but holding, while Grant's Tempest limped alongside, scarred but airborne. The unidentified ghost from Thorn's first flight reappeared on the horizon, now identifiable as a captured He-1162, its jet exhaust a blue flame, streaking at matching velocity before vanishing into the haze, hinting the shocking truth. An Allied team, including overlooked Canadian engineers, had coaxed the enemy jet to 500 first in secret trials, the crown stolen not by foes, but by wartime cunning. Resolution settled like fog over the debrief at Duxford, Thorn and Grant touching down amid a swarm of fire trucks and medics, their aircraft smoking hulks on the tarmac, the data reels salvaged from the cockpits confirming dual breakthroughs amid the peril. Hargrove and Riley enveloped them in bear hugs, tears mixing with relief, but young Caldwell's loss cast a pall, another name etched on the squadron roll, his Saskatchewan farm waiting empty. The brass poured over footage. The Mustang and Tempest both pierced 500, but the He-162's trial, run by a covert RCAF unit in Iceland, had edged it weeks prior, a shocking truth born of captured tech and Canadian grit. Emotional consequences rippled. Thorn grappled with the moral haze of using enemy designs. Grant confessed his brother's death had blinded him to risks, their rivalry forging unlikely brotherhood. Bitter realism prevailed. Speed's edge was fleeting. The war's skies still claimed souls daily, innovation a double-edged prop. As they shared a quiet pint in the officers' mess, Sinclair clapped their shoulders. "You've turned the tide, lads, Canada's mark on history." Yet somber reflection lingered, the hangar's lights dimming on repaired birds, symbols of endurance in endless conflict. Thorne gazed at the stars emerging, the weight of survival a quiet ache. Thorne's gaze lingered on the stars until the chill of the Kent night seeped through his flight jacket, pulling him back to the Quonset hut where maps and blueprints lay scattered like fallen leaves from a strategic oak. The revelation about the He-162 hung heavy in the air, a captured German jet repurposed by a shadowy RCAF team in Iceland, its secret trials claiming the 500 MPH milestone before Thorne's Mustang or Grant's Tempest had even taxied for their runs. Group Captain Sinclair had sworn them to secrecy, but the emotional undercurrents churned. Grant's face, etched with a mix of vindication and betrayal, mirrored Thorne's own turmoil. They'd bled for piston engines while engineers played with enemy fire. Hargrove, ever the anchor, clapped Thorne on the back as they dispersed, his Halifax burr rough with exhaustion. "Get some shut-eye, Elias. Tomorrow's another dance with the devil." Riley nodded solemnly, his rosary beads clicking like a metronome against doubt, the Quebecois pilot whispering a prayer for Caldwell's soul before limping away. The base at Duxford settled into an uneasy quiet, generators humming low, but sleep eluded Thorne in his bunk, haunted by the ghost plane's blue flame exhaust and the what-ifs of wartime ingenuity. Canada's contributions, from training fields in Manitoba to these covert labs, wove a tapestry of sacrifice, yet the shocking truth twisted like a faulty propeller. Speed's crown wasn't pure Allied triumph, but a hybrid born of desperation, raising questions of loyalty and the blurred lines between captor and creator. As dawn crept in, gray and sodden, orders arrived via ciphered teletype. Thorne, Grant, and a new face, squadron leader Mason Leclerc from Toronto, were to escort a convoy of modified Lancasters ferrying He-162 components south from Scotland, a high-stakes transfer to integrate the jet's secrets into Mustang upgrades. Leclerc, wiry and sharp-eyed with a French-Canadian lilt, briefed them over bacon and beans in the mess, his enthusiasm laced with caution. "This bird's a demon, rocket-assisted plywood frame, but she's ours now. One glitch, and we're chum for the Luftwaffe." Bonds formed quickly. Leclerc shared tales of his sister's letters from home, echoing the comrades' shared ache for normalcy, while Hargrove and Riley prepped the wingmen, their banter masking the rising dread of exposure. The mission's peril loomed large. Luftwaffe intelligence sniffed at Allied experiments, and a single radio intercept could summon a hornet's nest of FW-190s, or worse, the Me-262 swarms. Thorne strapped into his patched Mustang, the cockpit smelling of fresh oil and cordite residue, his mind racing ahead to the Scottish moors where the convoy waited, the weight of Empire's fragile edge pressing down like an unyielding canopy. Rising tension coiled tighter as the formation assembled over the Firth of Forth, the Lancasters lumbering like gravid whales under their heavy loads, flanked by Thorne's Mustang, Grant's Tempest, and Leclerc's Spitfire McDa-14th, its Griffin engine a throaty promise of power. Hargrove and Riley flew as rear guard in standard Spitfires, their voices a steady chorus on the radio, joking about Scottish whiskey to cut the nerves. The Scottish coastline blurred below, rugged and mist-shrouded, a far cry from the open channel runs, with hidden fjords perfect for ambushes. Emotional connections deepened in the cockpit isolation. Thorne thought of his Saskatchewan roots, the endless prairies that had taught him to read winds, now vital as cross gusts buffeted the formation toward 300 MPH in cruise. Grant's transmission crackled through, his tone edged with rivalry thawed by shared peril. "Keep it tight, Elias. If those components make it, your Mustang gets the jet boost first. Fair's fair." Laughter rippled from Leclerc, but the foreboding swelled. Weather reports hinted at a front moving in from the North Sea, and reconnaissance photos showed increased German patrols along the Norwegian coast, as if the Reich sensed the transfer's gravity. The war's demand for aerial supremacy had evolved. Canada's pilots, once mere extensions of British might, now guarded the keys to transonic flight. Their youth poured into machines that outpaced human frailty. As they droned south, a faint blip appeared on Thorne's radar, ghost echo or foe, prompting a spike in heart rates, Hargrove's voice sharpening. "Eyes peeled, lads. Could be nothing, or it could be everything." The feeling that something terrible approached intensified, a premonition rooted in the He-162's tainted legacy. What if the jet's blueprints hid sabotage? A Trojan horse from German engineers who'd feigned surrender? Comrades' voices wove a fragile web of reassurance, Riley reciting old squadron hymns, Grant admitting his Vancouver family's pride in his kills. But the skies darkened, clouds thickening like unspoken fears, the convoy's precious cargo a beacon for disaster. The major problem struck with vicious suddenness over the Yorkshire moors, the formation dropping to hedge-hopping altitudes to evade radar when a barrage of flak erupted from concealed batteries. Not Luftwaffe, but a rogue Allied anti-aircraft unit gone haywire, their guns mistaking the low-flying Lancasters for intruders amid the gathering storm. Chaos bloomed. One Lancaster shuddered, its starboard wing crumpling in a fireball that lit the heather below, crew bailing into the wind-whipped void as Thorn banked hard, his Mustang's guns chattering to signal friendlies. Confusion reigned supreme, radio flooded with overlapping cries. "Cease fire, you fools! It's us!" from Grant, drowned by Leclerc's frantic French curses as shrapnel peppered his Spitfire's tail. The hard decision crystallized for Thorn: peel off to strafe the gun positions, risking the convoy's exposure, or maintain formation and pray the gunners stood down, sacrificing the lead Lancasters' lives. Fear of death clawed visceral, raw as the G-forces in his evasive spiral, the acrid smoke from the burning bomber invading his oxygen mask. Memories of Caldwell's plunge flashing like lightning. Suffering mounted as a second Lancaster took hits, its engines coughing black plumes, the pilot, Captain Samuel Wright from Calgary, a father of 3, transmitting a gut-wrenching farewell. "Tell my girls I love 'em." Hargrove dove in support, his Spitfire weaving through bursts, but a shell grazed his canopy, glass shattering in a deadly hail that left him bloodied and half-blind. Suspense ratcheted to excruciating heights. Thorn's instruments flickered under EMP-like interference from the flak's proximity fuses, the Moor rushing up as he skimmed treetops, every fiber screaming retreat yet duty anchoring him. Riley's voice broke through the static, hoarse with rage. "It's a mix-up! Signals jammed! Press on!" But the ambush deepened when 2 escorting Tempests vanished into cloud, presumed spins or worse, their absence a void in the formation's shield. Thorn yanked the stick, committing to the strafing run, bullets from his .50 calibers raking the gun emplacements, silencing 2 but drawing return fire that holed his drop tanks, fuel leaking in fiery trails. The real terror peaked in isolation's grip, comrades' bonds straining under war's indifferent cruelty, the He-162 components now a cursed prize amid the carnage, Thorn questioning if the speed quest was worth this blood-soaked folly. Climax detonated in the storm's fury as Thorn pulled from his strafing pass, the remaining Lancasters scattering like startled geese, only for the heavy threat to coalesce, a flight of 4 Me-109s bursting from the clouds, their Daimler-Benz engines snarling as they pounced on the crippled formation, cannons blazing in precise defiance. Chaos absolute. Thorn's Mustang twisted into a furious dogfight, trading lead with a lead 109 that matched his speed knot for naught. The cockpit alive with the ping of ricochets and the roar of his Merlin at full tilt. Last chance materialized in a desperate Immelmann turn, Grant's Tempest joining the fray with a defiant whoop. Their combined fire downing 1 Messer, but at the cost of Leclerc's Spitfire, exploding in a mid-air bloom, debris raining like confetti from hell. If you're still here with him in this moment, subscribe, so their courage lives on. The explosive twist ripped through the melee. 1 Me-109, trailing smoke, broadcast a garbled English plea, Allied, don't shoot, revealing it as a captured bird flown by a defecting German ace, his intel spilling the shocking truth mid-chase. The Luftwaffe's TA-52 had secretly hit 500 MPH in 1942 trials, predating even the He-162, a high-altitude interceptor hidden in Norwegian redoubts, its radial BMW 801 engine tuned for stratospheric sprints. Thorn's world reeled as he evaded a second 109, the defector's plane peeling away to cover their escape, buying precious seconds for the surviving Lancasters to reform and bolt for Duxford. Hargrove, vision clearing, vectored in to claim another kill, his cheers ragged over the radio, while Riley herded the stragglers, his rosary a talisman against the odds. The ghost plane from earlier flights materialized again, this time as the defector's wingman, a modified Ta-152 in Allied colors, its pilot a Canadian test flyer from the Iceland team, confirming the hybrid heritage of Speed's crown. Thorn crested 510 MPH in pursuit. The Mustang's frame protesting but holding, the battle's frenzy forging clarity from confusion. Yet the revelation's weight hinted at deeper deceptions in the arms race. Resolution draped the survivors in weary triumph as they limped into Duxford Circuit, the two intact Lancasters touching down first, their He 1-62 payloads unloaded under armed guard amid the wail of ambulances for the wounded. Thorne taxied up, Grant beside him, both planes pocked with holes like sieves, the ground crews swarming as Hargrove and Riley landed last, the former's face bandaged but grin intact. Losses tallied grim, Leclerc gone, Wright's crew half drowned in the moors, their sacrifices etching fresh scars on the squadron's roll, emotional fallout crashing like the storm they'd outrun. Sinclair met them in the debrief, the defector, Hauptmann Carl Becker, gaunt and grateful, corroborating the TA-152's precedence, a prototype that outstripped Allied efforts until captured and dissected by Canadian boffins in '43. Bittersweet realism settled. Speed's shocking truth was a mosaic of stolen secrets, no single fighter claiming sole glory, but Canada's role in unraveling it pivotal, turning potential defeat into strategic windfall. Thorne slumped in a chair, Grant offering a shared cigarette, their rivalry dissolved in brotherhood's forge, while Hargrove recounted the dogfight with embellished flair to lift spirits. Riley crossed himself over Leclerc's empty seat, the rosary's beads a quiet dirge, the war's consequences rippling, haunted eyes, letters home laced with half-truths, the endless grind eroding souls. As medics tended wounds, the hangar lights gleamed on the salvaged components, symbols of resilience amid ruin, yet somber reflection prevailed. Innovation's price was paid in blood, the sky's kings forever shadowed by the fallen. Thorne stepped outside, the stars clearer now. The weight of survival mingled with curiosity's spark. What other ghosts lurked in classified hangars, waiting to rewrite the race? Thorne lingered under the crisp night sky at Duxford, the stars the indifferent canopy over the scars of the day's frenzy, his flight jacket zipped tight against the encroaching chill that carried whispers of the North Sea's salt. The revelation from Hauptmann Becker still echoed in his mind like a faulty engine stutter. The TA-152's secret sprints in 1942, hidden in Norway's fjords, predating every Allied claim and twisting the narrative of speed supremacy into a labyrinth of espionage and ingenuity. Grant joined him, lighting a cigarette with hands still trembling from the dogfight's adrenaline washout, his Vancouver drawl cutting the silence. That defector's tale changes everything, Elias. If the TA-152 was first, what does that make our Mustangs and Tempests? Foot soldiers in a race we thought we led? Hargrove and Riley approached from the shadows of the hangar, the former's bandage a stark white against his ruddy face, the latter clutching his rosary like a lifeline. They formed a loose circle, the base's distant hum of generators underscoring their quiet vigil. Canada's pilots, bound by prairies and ports, now guardians of a truth that could reshape the air war. Emotional threads pulled taut. Thorne thought of Leclerc's final burst of speed, a Quebecois firecracker snuffed out, while Grant confessed the gnawing void left by his brother's Battle of Britain ghost. The war's emotional toll mounted, not in explosions, but in these stolen moments of doubt, where innovation's thrill soured into the bitter realization that speed was no panacea against the Reich's relentless machine. As a meteor streaked overhead, fleeting as a pilot's lifespan, orders crackled over the base intercom. All experimental squadrons to assemble at dawn for Operation Velocity Dawn, a high-stakes interception mission over the Baltic, targeting a rumored Luftwaffe convoy smuggling TA-152 prototypes south. Leclerc's replacement, Flight Lieutenant Logan Fraser from Winnipeg's icy winters, reported in with a firm handshake, his eyes sharp with the fresh-faced determination that masked deeper fears. Bonds reignited swiftly. Fraser shared a flask of rye passed from Hargrove, tales of home weaving fragile armor against the foreboding that coiled like smoke. Rumors of Mi-262 jets escorting the convoy, their swept wings a harbinger of jet-age dominance. Riley crossed himself, murmuring a prayer for the fallen. While Grant sketched hasty tactics on a napkin, his rivalry with Thorne evolved into collaborative steel. The feeling that something terrible loomed intensified under the stars. The shocking truth about 500 MPH wasn't just historical footnote, but live ammunition, with Becker's intel pinpointing the convoy's path through Danish straits, where Allied bombers needed that edge to punch through defenses. Thorne exhaled slowly, the weight of Empire's gambles pressing down. Canada's sons once again at the vanguard, their Mustangs and Tempests primed for a dawn that might claim more than velocity records. Rising tension gripped the pre-dawn briefing in Duxford's ops room. Maps unfurled across trestle tables under the harsh glare of unshaded bulbs. Group Captain Sinclair's finger jabbing at red-inked routes snaking from Norway's coast. Thorne stood shoulder to shoulder with Grant, Hargrove, Riley, and the new blood Logan Fraser, the air thick with cigarette haze and the acrid tang of instant coffee brewed from yesterday's grounds. "This convoy's the Reich's last gas for high-altitude interceptors," Sinclair growled, his mustache bristling. "Ta-152s, fresh from testing grounds, hit 500 MPH in 42, but we've got the drop if we strike first. Thorne, your Mustang leads the dive. Grant, Tempest for close support. Fraser, cover the flanks." Emotional connections surfaced in the cramped space. Hargrove's easy jests about Scottish lasses lightening the mood. Riley's quiet nod to Fraser about enduring the G's. Their shared Canadian grit a bulwark against isolation. Yet foreboding seeped in like fog. Intelligence from Becker warned of escorting Arado R-234 jets, reconnaissance birds that could summon swarms before the Allies closed. Thorne's mind raced back to the He-162's plywood fragility, now juxtaposed with the TA-152's robust frame, the shocking truth layering deceptions. German engineers had gamed the velocities, inflating claims to demoralize the West, but real data showed the BMW-powered beast as a genuine threat, capable of stratospheric chases that left piston fighters gasping. As they filed out to their aircraft, mechanics swarming like ants over the oiled beasts, Grant clapped Thorne's shoulder. "For Leclerc, for Caldwell, let's end this race proper." The squadron taxied into the gray pre-light, props slicing the mist, Thorne's cockpit alive with the familiar creak of gauges spinning to life, his heart sinking to the Merlin's rumble. Over the radio, voices overlapped in ritual banter. Hargrove's "Tally-ho, eh?" drawing chuckles from Fraser. But the undercurrent hummed with peril, the Baltic's choppy waters below a siren's call for downed pilots. As they climbed southeast, the English coast fading astern, a faint radar ping flickered. Early warning or phantom? Riley's transmission sharpened the edge. "Steady, mes amis, storm front building, visibility dropping." The war's insatiable hunger for supremacy pressed on. Canada's contributions from frozen training fields to these high seas hunts forging legends in anonymity, the convoy's silhouette emerging on horizon scopes like a promise of climactic revelation. The major problem crashed upon them like Baltic gale as the formation crested 20 WW2 feet over the Danish Straits. The Ta-152 convoy, 6 transports flanked by Me-109 escorts, materializing through the scudding clouds, their radial engines a distant drone that swelled to thunder. Thorne's Mustang led the plunge, diving from the sun to shatter the morning haze, but confusion erupted when flak umbrellas bloomed prematurely. 80 mm shells from hidden coastal batteries stitching the sky with lethal precision. "Ambush! They've got us bracketed!" Grant's voice barked over the radio, his Tempest jinking wildly as shrapnel peppered his wings. The hard decision slammed into Thorne. Commit to the strafing run on the transports, risking the escort's counter, or abort and circle for bombers to soften the nest, dooming the prototypes to escape. Fear surged raw, death's chill in every buffeting gust. The cockpit vibrating as G-forces pinned him, memories of Wright's farewell and Leclerc's fireball assaulting like ghosts. Suffering intensified as Fraser's Spitfire took a direct hit, spinning earthward in flames. The young Winnipegger's scream cut short, leaving Hargrove to peel off in futile pursuit. Suspense clawed to its zenith. Thorne's airspeed climbed to 480 mph in the dive. The Ta-152 scattering like hairs, one prototype's sleek form breaking free, its pilot gunning for altitude in a bid to demonstrate the contested speed. Riley's transmission fractured the chaos. "Elias, Grant, cover me, I'm going in." But a Me-109 latched onto Riley's tail, cannons flashing, the Quebecois fighter erupting in a mid-air pyre that lit the straits like a false dawn. Isolation gripped Thorne, comrades' bonds fracturing under war's hammer, the acrid smoke of burning Avgas invading his mask, every control input a desperate calculus of survival. Grant dove alongside, downing an escort with a defiant burst, but his Tempest shuddered, coolant leaking in steaming trails. The real terror peaked in the Ta-152's shadow, its BMW roaring to match Thorne's velocity, teasing 500 mph in a parallel sprint that mocked Allied claims. The shocking truth unfolding in real time, German engineering's edge a blade at the throat. Hargrove's lone voice rallied, "Press it, lads, for the ghosts." Yet the ambush deepened, Transports jettisoning crates into the sea, prototypes slipping the noose. Thorne's world narrowing to the stick and the onrushing waves. Sacrifices weight crushing as he weighed glory against the squadron's bleeding heart. Climax ignited in the Strait's churning fury as Thorne crested 515 MPH, the Mustang's frame howling in protest. The lead tie 152 matching stride for stride until the heavy threat coalesced. A pair of Me-262 jets screaming in from the east, their Junkers engines a jet-age requiem that outpaced the fray. Chaos devoured the sky. Thorne twisted into a frantic scissors maneuver, bullets from the TA-262's nose guns raking his canopy in fiery stitches, while Grant's Tempest claimed a glancing hit on the prototype, sending it spiraling toward the drink. Last Chance burned bright as Hargrove barreled through the melee, his Spitfire a sacrificial ram that clipped a Me-109's wing, buying seconds for Thorne to line up the killing shot. If you're still here with him in this moment, subscribe, so their courage lives on. The explosive twist tore through the bedlam. The lead TA-152's canopy popped. Its pilot, a disguised Allied agent, Captain Benjamin Hayes from Toronto's Engineering Corps, embedded in German ranks, waving frantically before bailing. His transmission spilling the shocking truth mid-descent. The TA-152's 1942 flights were Allied fabrications, a disinformation ploy seeded by Canadian intelligence to lure Luftwaffe resources north, while the true first to 500 MPH was a forgotten RCAF Mosquito variant, tested in Manitoba's vast skies in late '41, its wooden frame and twin Merlins coaxed to velocity by prairie-born boffins like Hayes' team. Thorne's gun silenced the jet threat, the remaining transports veering into Allied hands as the Me-262s fled, fuel-starved, the revelation crashing like thunder. The Speed King's crown belonged to Canada's unheralded Mosquito, a bomber turned sprinter in secret trials that predated enemy wonders. Grant whooped raggedly, Hargrove limping alongside in his scarred Spitfire, the formation reforming amid drifting smoke, the Baltic below littered with debris, but the mission's core salvaged, prototypes captured, lies unraveled, the war's aerial narrative rewritten in Canadian ink. Resolution washed over the debrief at a forward base in liberated Denmark. Thorne, Grant, and Hargrove collapsing into canvas chairs as medics stitched wounds and salvaged data reels spun tales of triumph laced with loss. Fraser and Riley gone, their absences hollowing the room like empty cockpits. Hayes, pulled from the waves by rescue launches, confirmed it all. The Mosquito NF, Mk-16th, night fighter guys hiding speed experiments, had pierced 500 MPH on October 17, 1941. Over frozen lakes, a Canadian feat buried to protect sources from spies. Sinclair raised a toast with captured schnapps, his eyes misting. U-Lot turned myth to metal, Canada's the true Speed King. Emotional consequences rippled deep. Thorne grappled with the deception's moral fog. Grant mourned the needless risks born of secrecy, while Hargrove's grin hid the survivor's guilt, etching his features. Bitter realism tempered the cheers. The war ground on, skies still deadly, innovation's fruits reaped in blood. Leclerc's rosary now Fraser's heirloom in Riley's kit bag. As night fell, the captured TA-152s taxied under guard, their engines silent sentinels, symbols of a race ended not in glory but gritty resolve. Thorne stepped into the cool air, comrades' voices fading behind, the stars winking as if in approval, yet somber reflection clung. Speed's shocking truth was no singular hero, but a collective Canadian whisper that echoed louder than any roar. Thorne's boots crunched on the gravel path leading from the Danish base, the salt-tanged breeze off the straits carrying faint echoes of the day's thunder. His mind adrift on the Mosquito's hidden legacy, a wooden warrior from home that had outrun the jets before jets were dreamed. Grant caught up, slinging an arm around his shoulder, the pair walking in companionable silence broken only by Hargrove's distant laugh from the mess tent, toasting absent friends with whatever passed for spirits. But as they rounded a supply dump, a shadowed figure emerged, Squadron Leader Connor McLeod from Nova Scotia's coastal patrols, his uniform muddied from covert drops, clutching a sealed dossier stamped with RCAF eyes only. "Thorne, Grant, the Mosquito was just the start," McLeod murmured, his eyes darting to the horizon where searchlights probed the dark. "We've got reports of a prototype even faster, buried in the Yukon, something the Yanks don't know about, tested in '40. But it's drawing Nazi saboteurs north. High Command wants you two for extraction at dawn." The words hung like contrails, sparking a fresh curiosity that pierced the night's veil. Another ghost in the machine. Canada's secrets deeper than the Baltic's depths, promising pursuits that could redefine the war's endgame.